Welcome to Cockpit Talks, the Becca podcast full of insights, updates, and conversations that matter to Belgian airline pilots. From safety and regulations to everyday cockpit stories, we keep it relevant, real, and relaxed. Let's get started.
Hello, colleagues and aviation enthusiasts. Welcome to yet another podcast of the Belgian Cockpit Association. Today, we are joined by two guests to talk about cabin air quality. Hello, Vincent and Rudy.
Hi Cedric, hi Rudy.
Hi, both.
Hello, Vincent. You are new to the audience. Can you quickly introduce yourself to the people at home?
Yeah, so I'm Vincent Cabaret, just short V as many people call me. I'm a captain on the Airbus 330 for a major cargo airline. I've been flying for 20 years, initially on the Boeing 757 and transitioned to the Airbus 6 years ago. I was involved for Becca in the topic of cabin air quality to draft a standard, which later on became a technical report. And in that respect, I was chairing the Belgian Mirror Committee that helped drafting the technical report on cabin air quality chemical compounds.
Okay, great. And then Rudy, hello again. We've had you before on the podcast. Can you give a small introduction too for the people that didn't listen the previous time?
Yep, sure. Rudy Pont, captain on the A320, flying for about 20 years and chairing the Air Safety Committee here at the Belgian Cockpit Association. I was involved in drafting a protocol based on the medical protocol issued by the GCAQE.
Okay, that's pretty clear as well. So as I said, today's podcast is about cabin air quality, fume events, the aerotoxic syndrome, whatever you call it. It's quite a controversial subject, so let's maybe jump in and let's start with the basics. Can some of you explain to the non-pilots in the audience where does the air conditioning in an aircraft actually come from, and what's the thing with bleed air and stuff?
Well, the air comes from the engines, strictly speaking. So it comes from the engines, it is heated, and then is circulated through the cabin, so there is some recirculation of the air. And the issue with that is that engines are lubricated by oil, and normally the oil and the air are separated by a seal. And by design, this seal should expand as the engine functions, if I can put it simply, and then create a complete seal of the whole system so that the oil doesn't come into the cabin air. Sometimes the sealing isn't 100%, or it can break, and then some oil gets into the air and we can breathe it. That's the main issue.
Okay, so it comes into the bleed air, which is
into the cabin.
ducted from the engines, exactly,
Yeah.
into the captain, into the cabin. So then you get a fume event, and what's the problem, or is every fume event also an aerotoxic event?
So fume is a broad term. It's not just about oil. It can be anything you smell, actually. It can be de-icing fluid, can be hydraulics, can be something you put in the oven that is a bit smelly. And it's not always toxic or bad, but also sometimes it is possible that you don't smell it. So there are different levels, light, acute.
Okay.
It's a broad term.
Okay, and which toxins are released if it's toxic smoke?
So if it's toxic smoke coming from the oil, there's one main compound called TCP, and that means tricresyl phosphate. And that is a chemical compound that, when it's heated up, can give some noxious fumes and could be a potential health hazard.
Okay, so just to recap quickly, so the air is coming from the engines. It's really hot. It's before the combustion of the engines, ducted into the bleed system, going into the air conditioning, and sometimes you have engine oil mixing with this bleed air because there's a leak in the seal, and then you get these quite toxic smoke in the cabin.
Yeah, maybe I can jump in. The toxicity is especially neurotoxicity,
Okay.
and that is basically the issue. So our nerves in our body, they're quite insulated actually by a specific layer to make sure that there's enough connectivity of the signals back and forth from our brains towards wherever they need to be. And the problem is that these TCPs, these organophosphates, actually they start to corrode this layer.
Okay.
And that's the reason why people are sometimes start trembling or they get these toxic effects
Okay.
going.
And if you get this smoke into the cabin, what are we looking for? What kind of smell are we looking for? And what is the intensity of the smell?
We often talk about dirty socks
Okay.
or a wet dog. That's typically the kind of smell you could encounter. It's not necessarily visible, although in acute cases it could be. And it can sometimes come in waves when there's a change in engine power setting. Sometimes it comes and then it disappears, or worse, you think it disappeared because you got used to the smell, so you don't smell it anymore.
That goes quite quick, eh? Our nose is a really bad instrument. I mean, it detects mainly changes in odor. So if you are in a room and you smell something funny, after about 2-3 minutes, you will no longer smell it because your brain will actually try to neutralize it and
it's a bit like putting perfume on, and then after a
Yeah.
few minutes you don't smell
absolutely,
yourself.
absolutely.
But
But the other people do.
Yeah, true.
So therefore, it's always interesting because we were talking also about detection and what should you do. So, for example, there's this story about a cockpit crew that really smelled something, and they said, "Oh, this is really strong." After a few minutes, they didn't smell it anymore, but they had a headache, etc. So there was a little bit of confusion whether there was something wrong or not, whether they were experiencing a fume event. And then when the cabin crew actually entered the flight deck, she said, "Wow, what is this smell?" So sometimes it could be useful to ask somebody else to come inside the flight deck and see what's going on.
Yeah, that's a useful tip. We were speaking about visual cues. Vincent, you said there's not always a visual cue. Sometimes it's just invisible. Now, I want to maybe tell some of the passengers listening to this podcast as well that sometimes in hot and humid conditions you get some condensation as well. Can you explain a bit what this is, what we see in the cabin? Do people need to panic straight away or not?
No, not at all. So condensation, so hot and humid, the air conditioning is on to cool the airplane, and then it condensates a bit like you're in a sauna or a hammam. And when you see the condensation as well, there's absolutely nothing harmful to it. So it's not because you see something that it's bad, not necessarily.
Okay, that's quite clear. Let's jump back to the toxic events. Do you have any idea how often it happens?
It's hard to tell because, as Rudy already mentioned, the olfactory sense is subjective. Some people are more sensitive to it than others. And the only evidence we have are reports. If flight crews or cabin crews do not report a smell event, it doesn't exist. So the whole system in aviation is evidence-based. The only evidence we have are reports, no evidence, no problems.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult to quantify.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, it's absolutely true, Vinciane, and I think this should be for the pilots listening a real strong reminder that if you have any doubt, just report it. They can look into it afterwards, but make sure that it's reported.
That it's reported.
Yeah.
And reported via their safety management system.
Exactly.
In the tech log of the aircraft.
Yeah, absolutely. Do it via an ASR, raise an ASR, put it in. But another important issue is that what is not captured is whether people are getting sick or experience symptoms afterwards. And that is definitely something we need to work on. But I think that will come later as well in the podcast.
We'll talk about this subject a bit later. Are we looking at specific types of airplanes, specific types of engines, or do we see this on all different types of Boeing, Airbus?
Basically, all civil aircraft are affected except the Boeing 787, which was built
the
differently.
Dreamliner.
So the bleed air for the air in the cabin doesn't come from the engine, but from somewhere else. And so, there were some older types of airplanes that were prone to it, that are not so much, some of them don't fly anymore at all, but even more modern types of airplane are subject to potential fume events, all fume events in this case. Yeah.
Okay, and then today we're also calling in on a victim of the aerotoxic syndrome that likes to remain anonymous. Thank you for calling in on the podcast about cabin air quality. I would like to ask you a few questions. Did you experience a single or multiple events, Fume events in the aircraft?
I experienced a few events. Yes.
And were they visible in the cabin?
Uh, Once there was like a haze or fog in the cabin. But once, no.
Okay. And can you describe when did it happen? During the takeoff, cruise, or descent, or was it during the whole flight?
I have to remember how it was one immediately after takeoff, or about 6 minutes after takeoff, or something.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Then once it was during the flight, in the middle of the flight. Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I can
Perfect. And
remember.
could you describe any effects you had immediately after the event? Did you feel it directly after, or did it take some time before you started feeling unwell?
No, I could feel it directly. I was a bit confused. It's like you cannot focus anymore or concentrate. You have late reactions. Um, I was immediately aware something was wrong.
And any like headache or
Yes,
other effects?
dizziness, headache,
Dizziness. Okay.
a little bit, but what I was afraid of was the the the, the panic. Like it's your concentration that is totally lost. You're not
Mm-hmm.
alert anymore. You have late reactions, and that was a bit. Yeah, that's when I noticed there was something wrong.
Yeah, sure. And now we're a few years later. Do you still have any long-term effects? Are you still feeling the effects of the single or the multiple events you encountered?
Unfortunately, yes. My concentration, memory loss, weak muscles as well, fatigue is still there. But yeah, you find a way of living with it.
Yeah, sure.
But those are the symptoms that I still can feel
Yeah, so
after
it
all
still
those
has
years.
a
Yes,
big impact on your daily life.
yes, exactly.
Okay. Did you seek any medical help straight afterwards the events, directly after the event?
Directly after the events, yes, immediately.
Okay, and
Um,
did you feel like the doctors were helping you? Were they aware of the issue or?
Yes, but it was not known at the time, so a few of them have heard about it. So they tried to look up and try to help me, but yeah, there was no medication, or there is still no medication, I think. And still, yeah, I try to find a way of living and try to like your brain to do some exercises or to move because I had difficulty speaking as well. But yeah, you can train the brain, so
Yeah.
those are the things that I do now.
And
Yeah,
you said try to move because you felt as well that like your physical condition was going down as well.
exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Weak muscles, and I couldn't run anymore. Uh, do some sports. It was difficult. Um, but it came back. It came back.
Okay. That's pretty clear to us. Thank you so much for your small intervention in the podcast. We'll go
You're
back to the
welcome.
podcast and
It's an interesting topic, and
take
it's
care.
still unknown, so it's a good thing.
Exactly. Okay, thank you so much. And so this was pretty interesting. Vincent, can you maybe summarize a bit the effects and what are people reporting afterwards after such an event?
So I would say there are, if I can put it this way, basic effects. You could have headache, sore throat, eyes that feel a bit tired, nauseous, and these are like effects you could have for any reason. Some more acute effects are memory losses, muscle coordination, lack of concentration, tiredness, and those actually could also be present on the longer term.
Okay.
So it doesn't mean, and it also doesn't necessarily mean that you will feel something afterwards. You could very well step out of a fume event and feel absolutely fine, but it is still in your system. And on the long run, it is possible after a few years that side effects appear more neurological in that
Okay.
sense then.
So the effects could be like the person we just called could be long term over multiple years.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Some medical doctors actually compare it to a glass of water. They basically say when you're healthy and you start flying, you have an empty glass, and then every time you experience these fume events, whether it be chronic with low dose long term exposure or high dose sudden exposure, actually you're filling up the glass. And at a certain point, the glass is full, and then your body can't cope anymore, and then everything kind of stops. So I think that's a good analogy.
Okay. Is everyone equally impacted?
No,
No, we're all
and
different.
absolutely, it's all different. Some medical doctors talk about detoxifiers. So they say some people are well in metabolizing these toxins and getting rid of them, getting them out of the body. Other people are much more susceptible, and I think it's a little bit to compare with allergens. Some people have allergic reactions to some very low doses of allergens, and other people they just don't mention anything.
Yeah, so it's really on an individual case, which makes it maybe as well.
Absolutely, that makes it
difficult.
even more problematic because obviously when you have 6 or 12 people, depending on how many people are exposed, when they're all exposed and they all have different symptoms, it's easy to say, well, but maybe it's something individual and we cannot link it to this fume event, whatever.
Okay, you were talking about doctors and medical personnel. Is that already recognized as a professional disease?
Yeah, it's a very good question. No, it's not recognized as a professional disease. There's a lot of discussion ongoing. And a few years ago, Vinciane and me, we went to FEDRIS, which is actually the federal service for professional diseases, which does the follow-up and also gives the money if you really have an issue. And they're doing quite some research on that as well. And they compared it with the sick building syndrome. So most of the time when a disease or a group of symptoms is not yet recognized as being a professional disease, they call it a syndrome because it's clear that something is going on, but there might not yet be a causal link between what is causing it and then the effects. So that's why we speak about aerotoxic syndrome.
Yeah, okay. But there is already scientific evidence.
Yes, but a headache, scratchy throat, prickly eyes. Who's to say, was it oil, was it a fume event, or was it something else? So because we cannot make a factual causal link, it's very difficult to prove.
Yeah.
But there is something. I mean, Fedris said that at that time as well. They said, we agree that there is something, we cannot make a link.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's on the Belgian level, but internationally, if you go onto the GCAQE website, so the Global Cabin Air Quality Executive is a group of people who globally try to face this problem and bring together all the knowledge and all the know-how. And if you go to their website, you will see that there are studies already from the 70s. From the US Air Force, where it was recognized that this was really an issue. And for example, in military aircraft, they quickly came back from the idea of getting air from the engine for air conditioning and for use as for respiration air. They immediately said, okay, this is single pilot aircraft most of the time. If we lose the pilot, we also lose the aircraft. While in commercial aviation, we've seen that obviously this is a great system if it would work perfectly because it's very simple. You have compressed air that's already available, so you can just put it into the cabin. The only problem is that it comes into the cabin unfiltered, and that, as Vinciane said, you could have leaks which are accidental, but some of these seals are actually made to leak because this is the principle on which they work.
Okay.
So then obviously you have a big issue.
Yeah. Okay. Let's maybe jump to the chapter of detection. To detect, we need threshold values. We need to know what we need to detect. We need a norm. Vinciane, I understood you worked on this. Can you explain a bit What did you do?
As of today, there is no clear detection in airplanes, in jet airplanes at least. Some end user organizations use swab tests in the flights. You know, they took a swab, put it on the fuselage inside, and then they had it tested. But there is nothing in the cockpit that tells us, oh, there's a fume event ongoing. So
Okay.
it's really totally up to your nose and your own perception and your colleague's perception to decide, yeah, there is something wrong. Is it above a certain threshold or not? Nobody knows because there is no threshold.
Okay.
And that was a big discussion with the industry when we tried to draft this standard, is that once you set a norm, which norm, which compound, which sensor, I'm not even sure that they actually have the proper sensors for it.
Mm-hmm.
Where do we put the sensors? In the cockpit, in the cabin, in the middle, in the front? It's difficult. There is nothing today that warns pilots about problems.
Yeah.
No, one of the difficulties in sensing is that when the synthetic oil is heated and it comes above a certain temperature, then it will get paralyzed. So basically, it falls out in different components.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually these components that are dangerous. And if you take a can of oil, mobile jet oil, for example, you will read on the label, do not inhale fumes, because they could be cancerous. So the big issue in trying to detect is as Vinciane correctly mentioned, what compounds will we try to detect? Because they're paralyzed ones, and not really the ones that we have already. And at what levels do they become dangerous? And risk levels, over time, they change. What we accepted 20 years ago is maybe not the same what we accept today.
Exactly. Yeah, look at the discussion with PFAS, for example, in Belgium. You already see that's a bit in the unknown, and we don't manage to get a common threshold value. But Vincent, you worked on the norm, I guess.
Yeah.
Or how did the process go?
It was a lengthy process. We started initially in 2015. We came with a draft just before COVID. We received like over 1,000 comments, and I remember being home during COVID, waiting for my training on the 330, and having endless afternoons of Zoom calls to resolve the comments. So I wasn't in all of the task groups. I was mainly in the preventative and correction action, and also in the monitoring part, because this is really more related to flight crews and cabin crews. And it was lengthy. I mean, we could really see the industry trying to, I wouldn't say minimize, but trying to find ways that they shouldn't have to change the design of their planes, because that is a huge job. And also trying to downplay a bit the issue, since it's not a recognized professional disease. There was issues with, as we just mentioned, monitoring thresholds with filters. What kind of filters? Do they exist? Maybe not. Actually, no, they don't. What do we use? And most of those votes for norms are weighted votes, which means that the bigger the country, the bigger the proportion, and so the bigger the weight. So as soon as you have France, Germany, Spain, and Italy, well, we lobbied all the other countries, but it was never enough. And so that's how we ended up having just a technical report.
Okay. So we didn't manage to actually agree on a norm.
It's not exactly a norm. A technical report is merely a guideline. A norm, you can translate it into your local legislation. A technical report is just a guideline that is there. It's less binding is maybe not the word, but it's not as big, to put it simply.
Okay, yeah. And then really, so Vincent, maybe to summarize, so you were talking about detecting on norms during the event. Really, I understood you worked a bit on what's afterwards. What are we? Let's say you go to a physician, to a doctor, and you're looking for specific markers. Or?
Yeah, so that's a big problem. What we see, in my opinion, so Becca, as a strategy between brackets, we said, okay, we're gonna play this on two fronts. First of all, we'll try to get a norm in place. That's what Vinciane was working on, and spent an enormous amount of work on it. So thank you again for that. Absolutely. And on the other hand, In my opinion, being a safety guy, this is simply a safety issue. So in safety management, what you try to do is you try to identify hazards. You try to put risks to those hazards and say if they're acceptable or not. And whenever you find a risk which needs to be mitigated, so it needs to be get under control, you try to come up with ideas, and then you check if it works. Basically, that's safety management.
That's the feedback mechanism.
Absolutely, okay. and it's a PDCA circle or however you want to call it, but that's the ongoing learning that's needed for safety to improve. What we see nowadays is that we see people are getting sick on aircraft. Sometimes related to a fume event, sometimes it's over a longer time, etc. But people are really getting sick, and there is quite some evidence on that. We were talking about academic research on that. Mm-hmm. There are studies that can really say that. Obviously, there are even more studies most of the time funded by industry that say the opposite. But anyway, but we see people getting sick. The only problem is whenever there's a fume event, most companies will guide their people to an AME or a doctor, but it's quite fragmented. So these people, they go to a doctor, they see a doctor. Most of the time, this doctor is not aware of what is a fume event or what is an aerotoxic syndrome. So they do not know what to look for. And then this information is gone. And so basically you have a problem, but you don't follow up on the problem. Yeah. So when there was a protocol, a medical protocol published that described in detail how the different substances and toxins could be traced and what tests are available and how to preserve, for example, the blood or the hair samples or urine or whatever that you can use to send to a laboratory and get this information out. Once they published this, it was so big and it's really an academic paper that I thought, well, that's great work, but it's almost useless on the flight deck. Yeah. So together in cooperation with the GCAQE, we started the idea of putting this together in some sort of a quick reference handbook where we actually would translate this quite difficult and in-depth information into something practical. And that's basically what has happened. Last year, we published the caqprotocol.online website where all of this information is available. And we actually published a guidance, which is basically a QRH, where you can literally see, okay, what are the different steps that we need to take whenever we are involved in a fume event. And people can download it. And there's even the original version, Word version, where you can say, okay, for my airline, maybe these tests are not applicable or they're too expensive or I don't find a lab to do it. So you can leave them out. You can adapt it. You could put your own logo, whatever. But all of the information is there. And on top of that, it's referenced towards the official document. Which is
so
published.
That's super interesting. We'll put the link as well on the screen right now and in the description of the podcast. Do you know which website it is?
Yeah, it's a CAQ protocol, so Cabin Air Quality Protocol.online. So a very special ending, but we needed to make it international, so CAQ Protocol.online.
Okay, very interesting. The problem is as well the economic pressure we feel from the airplane manufacturers, because indeed they seem to have a big problem. Are there economic consequences for the airplane manufacturers? Does it need to be disastrous, or do we have suitable workarounds and alternatives?
Well, first of all, if you have a fume event, the plane has to be checked. So once you report it, initially the plane is grounded until they can check it. I mean, you have 2 packs on board. Maybe you have the time to select one pack after the other and find out, okay, it comes from pack 1 or pack 2. So that's the first thing. Grounding a plane is for the operator always expensive. And for the manufacturers, they would have to redesign how planes work. But the basic problem is with the oil. Initially, aviation started with mineral oils, and we didn't have so many toxic compounds releasing with the heating up of mineral oils. But the problem is they don't go to such high temperatures that we need in a jet engine. And so then we had to revert to synthetic oils. So working on the oil and the composition of the oil will be a first step, which shouldn't be too expensive, I think. It's relative, but not too expensive for the manufacturers. and it doesn't take redesigning the whole plane to do it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you do like the Boeing 787, you take air from someplace else.
Yeah, but that's a whole new design. So
That's
it
a whole new
means
design.
current airplanes flying, they cannot do it. So going to a different type of oil would be a good solution.
I would think that's one way to start. I don't know what you think, Rudy.
Absolutely. Nyko just came out recently with a new type of oil, which is apparently much less toxic. So it removes all of the additives that are actually containing these organophosphates. So that's a fantastic idea, and I think we should definitely support that. For the moment, it's only military certified because for commercial airlines to use it, they need approval from the engine manufacturer. And there you see already a bit of the issue that some of these engine manufacturers have good relationships with oil companies. And so you see where the competition can start. Obviously, if there's a new player on the market delivering this new oil, they could see this as a competition and say, okay, we're going to delay maybe the certification, or is it such a big thing, etc., etc. So there's a lot of lobby going on in the background, and I'm really happy that Vincent said we need to approach this evidence-based, and that's basically also what the Becca standpoint position always has been. We need to get the emotions out, and that's not easy because people are really affected. People are dying because of this. We just lost
I think we can quote her, Dr. Susan Michaelis, who fought really hard on the medical protocol, on the norm. She really dedicated her life to it because she lost herself her license due to oil smells, and she passed away last summer to consequences which could clearly be linked to toxic fumes. And so, yes, we need people like her. I mean, she was laughed at, mocked at by the industry, but she kept on going. And yes, she has a point that there is something, and something needs to be done.
Yeah. Okay.
But it also points, if I just may, it also points to the big interests that are related to this topic, and that's also the reason why. What I said earlier, for every study that proves that there is an issue, there's a contrary study, opposing study that kind of neutralizes it. Because obviously we have to face reality. If tomorrow there is actual evidence that there's a causal link between people getting exposed to fumes and they're getting sick, then the industry faces enormous liability and litigation. And that is a truth that cannot be denied. So am I saying that the industry is forcefully opposing? No, I'm not saying that. But there is a big interest, and that has to be said.
Yeah, that's pretty clear. Do we see any examples of airlines or other players in the aviation sector that are making a difference? Do we see some technological evolution?
There has been an airline back in 2017 that went into the press saying, yeah, we're working to try and develop a cabin air filtration. But since then, I haven't heard anything back from it. I know in my airline, when we had the older Boeings, they knew per airplane, so per registration, okay, this one we need to change stuff after 50 cycles, this one after 100 cycles, because they monitored it. So, again, trying to do something about it is also saying we admit that there is a problem. And that's a bit
there's a finger on the finger on the wound. That's
Okay.
basically it. And so you see also that many initiatives are kept secret within the airline, and that's really funny because it's actually a good thing. But people are saying, or companies are saying, yeah, we don't want to be liable, and just by doing this, almost admit indeed what you said, that we have an issue. So yeah, that has to be recognized.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go into practical detail for the pilots, their colleagues, BICA members. What if you fly an older aircraft? What to do during an event, after the event? Any practical tips to give?
Yeah, well, the best would be that people just get on the CAQ protocol.online website. They download the PDF or Word file, whatever. Just print it, put it in your bag, and you have everything you need. And in an ideal world, basically, we would see that at national level, the airlines would get around the table. They would agree on, okay, can we use this? Cannot we use this? This was actually intended as being a discussion starter. Okay, what can we do? In an ideal world, what we had in mind was that at national level we would propose this. All the airlines would come together, say, okay, we agree, we don't agree to do this or that test, and that we would form some sort of a national laboratory or a center of expertise where people that were involved in a Fume event could be sent. Could, for example, be a hospital in Brussels where we would send all these people. The doctors there, they would know what to do. Because, for example, in the protocol, we also have letters to the doctors explaining, listen, this and this and this we expect from you, or this is the reason why people are exposed to this. To give you a really small anecdote, I had a Fume event myself where we landed in Nice. Obviously, we grounded the aircraft, and I explained to the red cap, okay, we cannot start the boarding, so you have to wait with the boarding because probably the aircraft's not going to fly anymore, but I still have to contact the company. And I mentioned we had fumes on board. And I think about 10 minutes later, we had the gendarmerie there with mitraillettes and assault rifles because they thought there was terrorist attack on board.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So I had to explain them, no, this is a known issue, etc. So you see how little people are aware of this. And this really needs to be changed. So if we would have a center of expertise, I'm talking Belgium, but we could have that anywhere in Europe, then these people could actually collect all of the information there is. They could collect all of the lab results, and that could be done in a de-identified way, where afterwards we would create a body of evidence where universities, medical personnel, researchers could go and see, okay, can we use this for a study? So that would be the ideal world, but because then we would actually start from where is the problem, we try to analyze it and then to solve it. Because what we do nowadays, for example, EASA has started already version 3 of their cabin air quality study, where basically they've now exposed mice, so in vivo experiments where they living mouse exposed to fumes. But what they do is they kind of build a simulator which simulates the engine bleed system, which is then let into air conditioning. So it's kind of artificial. And that I'm not saying that's bad research. I think it's a controlled environment, etc. The only problem is that if nothing comes out of there, we still have people that are getting sick on the aircraft. So maybe we should use that evidence also to see what's happening.
Okay, pretty clear. So to summarize, reported via your ASR safety management system, websites, application, whatever, as a crew member, write it in the tag log, and then print already today the protocol, put it in your flight bag, and if needed, you can go to any medical center and try to brief them on the issue.
That's not gonna be easy. To be really honest, there are some companies that already have guidance. Obviously, you will follow your company guidance first of all. I mean that's pretty clear if you have it. And I know, for example, in Brussels Aviation Medical, they also try to follow up on these issues. They are aware what it is. I'm not saying it's perfect, but at least there's a standardized way of gathering the data, and I think that's essential.
So blood samples, how to preserve
for
the
example,
blood samples. Okay, it's quite important.
And don't hesitate to protect yourself if you have one in flight. Oxygen mask.
Absolutely.
Don't hesitate. I mean, it's maybe best to use it than to be fully incapacitated before you land. So.
Yeah, that's the safety issue indeed. So we need to be able to land the aircraft. Okay, Rudy, Vinciane, thank you so much for your time for the podcast.
Thank you.
And to the people at home, thanks for listening to the Becca podcast, and till next episode.
Thanks for listening to Cockpit Talks, brought to you by the Belgian Cockpit Association, the voice of pilots in Belgium. Visit our website, beca.be, and subscribe at our socials for the latest updates.